All right, this is the second in a series of videos. We're trying to explore what the heck culturally responsive teaching is. This is part two where we focus on strategies. A lot of these strategies can be found in my book, Teaching Strategies for All Teachers, Roman and Littlefield. So let's begin our journey, shall we? Strategies and conditions conducive for culturally responsive teaching. As we found out in a previous video, strategies in and of themselves do not constitute culturally responsive teaching. So let's explore these. I used to think that I just needed to learn a set of strategies and then I would be doing culturally responsive teaching. That was misthinking on my part. That is not a set of strategies. Defining our terms, culturally responsive teaching is a way of teaching that uses students' cultural and linguistic background to impart knowledge and skills. It builds upon what students already know to help them learn new stuff. Or as a colleague said, simply listening to your students and using that as a basis for teaching. Gloria Ladson-Billings says, culturally responsive teaching involves three interacting and interconnected elements: high academic standards that focus on students' total intellectual growth, not just achievement scores, but total, the person, the whole person. Cultural competence and inclusion. Yes, it utilizes students' culture, but it builds on that and helps them navigate multiple cultures. They should not have to leave their own culture behind. It recognizes that and validates that and values what students bring into the classroom. And critical or sociopolitical consciousness. Critically examine issues. Now, culturally responsive teaching is not any one of these, but it is found at the intersection of all three of these. So let's take a look. What are some of the conditions? The first one is authenticity and congruence. You cannot be a culturally responsive teaching without being in relationship with your students. For this to occur, you must first display authenticity and congruence. This enables your authentic self, students to see the human being, not simply a teaching persona or a set of strategies. Towards this end, you might share a bit of your life with students as appropriate. This as well calls for writing activities where students are able to write and share about their ideas and their experiences and share in small groups. That also means that you might write and share. Again, they need to see you, and you might partake in small group discussions. Authenticity, you are your real self, and congruence between your teaching persona and your real persona. There is congruence. Trust. Relationship of any kind is built on trust. Now, students, this means we trust students to learn as well. Students naturally want to learn. Learning is a part of the human condition. So we must trust students to learn as well. Not every assignment needs to be graded. Not every unit needs to be tested. Progress can be monitored gently and infrequently. Students might be encouraged, this is the trust part, to demonstrate their learning in ways that are not always measurable. We should not need to manipulate students by grades or other types of rewards for real learning to occur. And the third one, see and be seen. These are conditions. One cannot relate to what one cannot see, so space should be provided within the class or curriculum for students to see other students and be seen by other students. So this includes sharing, writing or journal entries, class meetings, small group discussions, and listening practice. And we're going to look at that right now. So these are strategies. The first one is listening skills or active listening skills. This enables one to fully attend to what another person says with honest intent. Honest intent means you sincerely try to understand and respond to what another person is saying. You're not simply waiting for a quiet spot to jump into the conversation. You respond, you listen. Active listening skills will enhance a teacher's ability to relate to students, to parents, to classmates. But these skills, these listening skills, should also be taught to students at all levels to enhance their ability to relate to other students. These can be introduced and explicitly taught and practiced at all levels, starting in first grade, maybe even kindergarten. These skills, listening skills, are especially relevant in the middle school and high school years as students are grappling with social and interpersonal issues. For example, once a week, Mrs. Perez has listening skills, listening practice in her 7th grade social studies class. Students are randomly paired here. One person is the listener, the other person is the speaker, and she might give a speaking prompt like, describe a problem in your life, or tell about an important event in your life. Other days, she might simply say, what do you want to talk about today? The speaker shares while the other student engages in active listening. After 5 to 8 minutes, the roles are reversed. And this is described in length in my book that I just described. Cooperative learning is another strategy that is conducive to culturally responsive teaching. It's a structured teaching and learning activity in which small groups of students work together using a variety of learning activities to accomplish a shared goal. And it consists of 5 parts. First, a specific lesson-related task to be accomplished or a product to be created. Positive interdependence. This means that all students must be actively engaged in the completion of the task to be successful. The third is face-to-face interaction. Cooperative learning groups, when they're working, students must be seated knee to knee, eye to eye, so that they can look at their group mates as they're working together. Fourth is social skills. Cooperative learning provides the perfect venue to use for teaching social, interpersonal skills that are necessary for the group to function. And the last one, reflection and review. At the end of every cooperative learning activity, time is set aside for the groups to examine their effectiveness in working together and completing the task. The third strategy is problem-based learning. This connects the curriculum to real-life problems, to the real world, by inserting real-world problems into the curriculum or using real-world problems as the basis of the curriculum. Now, these real-world problems could be large societal issues, they could be community issues, or they could be personal issues, interpersonal issues, or social problems that students are having within the class. This is how you make that connection. The curriculum becomes relevant. Experiential learning is another strategy that enables students to make connections to the real world. The goal is to create learning that is based on real life experiences. It's the process by which learners construct knowledge, skills, and values from a direct experience. Here you have an experience first, followed, and this experience is related to a skill or some other real world activity, followed by a secondary experience, which is instruction. For example, if I was teaching a measuring skill in science, they might have an actual measuring experience, measuring or weighing or doing something. They mess around with it. And you say, well, what did you learn? What did you discover? The teacher then fills in the blanks. Experience first and instruction late, during, or after. This is different from expository teaching, where you give instruction first and then have the experience to reinforce. Which one is better, expository teaching or experiential discovery learning? They should both be used. And again, experiential learning, have the experience first, provide instruction during or after. Expository teaching, information first, instruction first, and experience later. They should both be used. Service learning is an experience in which students learn through active participation in an organized service experience that meets a community need. 4 components: preparation, used to provide students with the background information and skills necessary for the project. Second is student engagement, service. They're engaged in some type of meaningful work within the community. Reflection is the act of thinking critically about the experience afterwards, and celebration is a concluding activity used to recognize a job well done. Values clarification. It's a pedagogical strategy that can be used to enable students to analyze, identify, and describe their own values, what they value or find important. Here, students are usually asked to describe or list or rank or rate things that they find important or of worth. This could be traits. What traits do you value in yourself or another person? What people do you value? Physical things or experiences do you value? Students then usually share their ideas in small groups or with another person, or sometimes they work in small groups to come to consensus. In the sharing and in the values clarification activities, the outcome is not nearly as important as the process of identifying what they value and sharing what they value with other people. This is described in my book in more detail as well. But there are 3 defining attributes to good values clarification activities. First, students' ideas and insights are respected. Teachers do not correct or evaluate or validate students' responses. And of course, that doesn't mean you never do that, but that to the greatest degree possible. If students come up with a value that is harmful or hurtful to others, of course, you use that as a teaching moment. Students are free to make choices. Teachers do not lead students to predetermined choices or responses about what to value or what behavior they should have. And there's always discussion of sharing our ideas either before or after the activity. These are 3 attributes, defining attributes of a values clarification activity. Now, a T-talk is a structured discussion activities that enables students to identify and express their views in pairs, in small groups, large groups, and then individually. It's a structured activity in which everyone participates. First in pairs, find an idea for and against, and this is described in detail. This is how you make real-life connections. This is how you address the 3 elements related to culturally responsive teaching. Language experience activities are activities, it's a literacy learning strategy in which students dictate an experience that they've had. The teacher then records what they say. This can be done in large group, small group, or individually. And then they practice reading. This is a powerful literacy learning experience for 2 reasons. First, on an interpersonal level, language experience activities enable you to make personal connections with students. You can see what's going on in their lives. On an instructional level, this is usually done in the primary levels, primary grades. It enables students to practice reading or sounding out words or comprehension activities using their words that are in their lexicon or their experiences. This makes learning to read easier. Analytic phonics is done with their words and experiences, using that to develop letter-sound relationships. And the last idea, and these are just some, asking students to write for real-life audiences. Students should be able to record their ideas and observations using journal writing or short observations or poetry or whatever creative writing. And then it becomes alive. Writing becomes alive when other people read it and respond to students' writing. This is writing for real life audiences, not just for the teacher. Ways to share. Turn to a neighbor. Share what you've written today or trade with a neighbor. Respond and write on the paper, or share in small group, or post on a blog or an internet, or create books online and in paper. Display the writing or author's chair, where one or two students share each day. This is how writing becomes alive. 3, interacting in interconnected elements. High academic standards that focus on students' total intellectual growth. Cultural competence and inclusion. Critical or sociopolitical consciousness. Culturally responsive teaching is at the intersection of all 3. And here are some strategies presented in this lesson that helps to facilitate or cultivate these 3.